anybody pull me away from what I know you said about me. It won't be an instance where I be like, the wife made me do it, the friend made me do it. No, I know the responsibility that you gave me. So what do I look like not following through? We talked about the gifts last week. What do I look like burying the very thing that you deem necessary for me to use here to fulfill my purpose?
Things that we needed to improve on. The book was an easy read, easy to follow. And of course, the assignments that we had were fun. It didn't seem like it was like, oh, it's a task. So the teacher was great, very down to earth, easy to follow. Class was great. I would definitely recommend it.
The way he breaks it down, the passion that he has and what he teaches is amazing. And to be around somebody else that has that like-minded kingdom thinking like me was absolutely amazing. I work in Atlanta, so I Zoom here on Wednesdays to get back home so I can be here for this class. So Dexter was absolutely amazing.
What I liked about the class was the fact that learning more about self-identity and even more about the gift, how to nurture it, how to empower it, as well as how to notice the attacks. That was my biggest thing. I like the fact that, Minister, I call him Reverend Dexter, Brother Dexter. He explains the class on how to see these things and how to achieve these things in your own realm.
Speaking truth and power, unlocking minds, one day at a time, day at a time. Speaking truth and power, unlocking minds, one day at a time, day at a time. Truth of the matter is that truth really matters, yeah. Truth of the matter is that truth really matters, yeah. In the beginning, I was back and forth like badminton. Lacking wisdom, no direction for proper decisions. I heard my bro had a show, so I started to listen. Truth of the matter, ain't no comparing the competition. The kid feeling blessed, cause it's clear as when Dex. After talking with Dex, I know just where to step. I know the path gon' be narrow, but my eyes on the sparrow. And the truth of the matter is that truth really matters. Truth of the matter, that truth really matters. Hey, truth of the matter.
Greetings. Welcome to Truth of the Matter, where we are having transparent conversations dealing with today's issues to help you navigate your world. I am your host, Dexter Peggins Jr. Listen, today's show should be an interesting one. I know that you probably say, well, Dexter, you say that every time. I say it every time because I believe it every time. But nevertheless, today's show is entitled Under Pressure. I think that today's show, that for those who are listening and viewing this message, it's my hope that you will actually find something in this that you can identify with. But not only can you identify with it, but you can also put it into operation. But before we get into today's message, allow me to do what is customary here, and that is share the quote of today. Today's quote comes from the late, great Martin Luther King Jr. Today's quote reads as such: "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." I believe that we live in some pretty serious times, and we can definitely use some extra doses of love. So just be mindful of that as you navigate your world, to be mindful to go the extra mile and extend grace and to demonstrate love. Listen, today's subject is personal to me, as I mentioned before. The reason why it's personal is because it's something that I myself am actually working the process out. I'm on the other side of it in many regards. I've utilized some of the tools that I'm going to discuss later on in previous times in life. And so, hence, when I said, I hope that you can find something that you can apply to your own life. One of the hats that I get to wear in my everyday world is the hat of a speaker. And I was recently invited by a Fortune 500 company to come out to their organization on October 10th. And if you're not familiar with October 10th is actually World Mental Health Day. And so, ironically, I have found myself in the space giving a lot of talks concerning mental health and mental wellness. I am not a clinician by no degree, uh, but nevertheless, I've been in this space in some capacity for a length of time and been able to uh, get my voice out there and trust that people have found benefit from what I have been able to share over the years. Uh, Let me share the personal part before we jump right into it. Uh, in May of this year, a few months ago, I was actually laid off from a job that I had been working, a position that I've had for the better part of almost 10 years, but right at 10 years. I have been working in some capacity with the government for over 20 years. I was in the military, did a quick hiatus as a hospital chaplain, and then from there was working in this position as a contractor for the Department of Defense. Now, my job with the DoD uh, literally was the trifecta of employment. And what I mean by the trifecta is the pay was good. I enjoyed the people I worked with, and I believed in the mission. And I believe that if you find yourself working in any uh, position where you can check off those three blocks, you're definitely probably in a good place to be. But nevertheless, to all of our surprise, uh, the government was doing some budgetary layoffs or budgetary shifts, and as a result, my whole department was laid off. Now, if you're familiar with the movie Friday, you may remember that Craig was fired on his day off. Well, let me tell you, I can one up Craig in this regard because I was actually laid off on my birthday. If you're familiar with the expression Murphy's Law, uh, in addition to being laid off, it seemed like Murphy's Law found me literally the day after I was laid off. Murphy's Law is simply whatever bad can happen, it will happen. And so it seemed like there was just a string of difficult events, one after the other, that I was finding myself dealing with since this time of termination. Now, coupled with the responsibilities that I have as a husband, as a father, as a business owner, as somebody who, takes care of a number of different things and a number of different people, uh, consequently, the stress of the things began to impact my health. And I found myself exhibiting signs of what I thought was a heart attack. And so, needless to say, thanks be to God, I'm on the other side of that. Everything is checked out clear, and I'm back on the road to recovery. I found it really ironic that this opportunity presented itself as I was going through what seemed to be a very difficult season. And I won't undermine it and say that it was easy because it has had its challenges. I've just learned to be resilient, and I learned a lot about myself through the course of going through what I have been going through for these past few months. Now, the conversation about under pressure really deals with how we manage stress. Now, I'm going to do something different today, especially for my viewing audience. I'm actually going to share a modified version of the presentation that I was going to give to this organization. As I mentioned, or if I failed to make mention, as I was preparing for this particular talk, some things fell through, and unfortunately, we weren't able to proceed with the conversation. But I said, you know what? Just because I can't give it to this company, allow me to share it with my audience, because I know that there's some things in here that would be beneficial to them. And so, for those who are viewing, you'll actually see the modified version of the slides. Because listen, I'm not going to show the whole thing because you have to pay to play. But you'll see some good nuggets that I think that you could take away from it. But also for my listening audience, I don't want you to feel left out. I will make sure that I am highlighting and speaking to those things that the viewing audience may be able to see. So allow me to say this. I know I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I believe that we're probably all familiar with stress in some capacity. Uh, you know, essentially, it's that feeling you feel when, when you have to be in two places at one time, and no one seems to be able to assist you. It's that feeling you feel when the coworker calls in, and now they decide that they want to bombard you with your coworker's caseload, and so now you're managing not only your caseload but also that of your coworker. It's the feeling that I feel when my wife asked me for the 15th time to do something that I told her I was going to do 2 months earlier. We know this feeling of stress. Whatever the situation is, whatever your situation is, put it in your mind and think about how you feel when certain situations and issues arise. From a definitive standpoint, stress is defined as a feeling of emotional or physical tension. It can come from any event or thought that makes you feel frustrated, angry, or nervous. Stress is your body's reaction to a challenge or a demand. Now, listen, based upon this definition, I don't want to give out any fraudulent information, making you think that stress is solely negative, because it's not. Stress can actually be either good or bad. If you think about it, uh, good stress, and for those who are listening, good stress is actually known as eustress. Uh, it's the type of stress that comes from the feeling of excitement. And I want you to get an image in your mind. If you're an action junkie like I used to be, I used to enjoy roller coaster rides. I don't know what happened, but it seemed like when I turned 30, I was all of a sudden I got nauseous riding roller coaster rides. But up until then, I loved the thrill of going to an amusement park. But listen, as you are on the roller coaster, getting ready to make that 1,000-foot drop, imagine that feeling that you would feel in your stomach. It's almost like your heart was jumping up to your throat. And then right before you make that plunge, all of the adrenaline. Well, listen, that's stress. That's actually good stress. Another example may be when you are uh, receiving news that you got a promotion on the job. The that flood of emotions that come in, that excitement, that maybe that initial apprehension, that's all working together, and it creates an environment within yourself where now you feel this excitement, this euphoric feeling. You become more alert. As I mentioned with the roller coaster ride, you want to get on another roller coaster ride. So these are examples of good stress. But here's the thing: bad stress, and that's something that you might not want to endure too much of. But bad stress, what it does is that it often leads to anxiety, fear, poor health, lethargy. What makes bad stress particularly bad is that it can become chronic, meaning that it will last well beyond the moment in which the event happened. And based upon the perceived implications, that stress can lead to other symptoms. And so imagine a trauma or sorts, or an event that creates this environment of stress within you. Ultimately, if it's unaddressed, what it does is that it can actually create anxiety, and subsequently that can turn into maybe a form of depression, where you begin to dread the implications of the event or encountering the event once again. And so those are the things to be on the lookout for as it pertains to good stress and bad stress. And so let's talk about some of the warning signs of stress. For those who are watching this, and if you see the list, you might say, well, Dexter, I'm dealing with all of those. And what I would tell you to do is look towards the picture to your right. And what you'll see is a stop sign, because that is an indicator that you may need to stop doing whatever it is that you're doing, and to readdress and to reevaluate the things that you may be taking on. But listen, warning signs of stress, you have your emotional or your psychological signs. These consist of being irritable, angry, impatient, wound up, overburdened, overwhelmed. This is once again that anxiety that I mentioned earlier, being feeling of nervousness or being afraid, uh, unable to enjoy yourself, depressed, uninterested in life, like you lost your sense of humor, a sense of dread, worried or tense, feeling neglected or lonely. Some of the actual physical manifestations of stress are difficulty breathing, panic attacks, blurred eyesight, sleep problems, fatigue, muscle aches, chest pains, high blood pressure, indigestion, heartburn, feeling sick, dizzy, or fainting, sudden weight loss, sudden weight gain. And the list actually goes on, but the reality is that these are some things that we have to be mindful as it pertains to our own well-being. One of the things that I believe, and one of the things that I've recognized over the course of my life, my 44 years, is that there's a lot of people who do not make themselves a priority as it pertains to their health. Oftentimes, they're taking care of so many issues that they tend to neglect themselves. I often tell my wife that, when you're taking care of everybody else, who's going to take care of you if something were to happen to you? If you're out the picture, I imagine everyone else will figure it out. But the reality is that you, sweetheart, need to make yourself a priority. As I mentioned, I am a man in his mid 40s now, or on the later spectrum of the early 40s. And a lot of my peer group, what I've consequently have seen over the years is that a lot of us are not passing away as a result of violence. We're not losing our life as a result of drug usage or DUIs or things like that. We're actually losing our life because we're not taking care of our health. Uh, I've lost friends from things such as aneurysms, where literally the stress it impacted their blood pressure, and they were unable to manage it to the point where consequently they ended up losing their life. It's a beautiful thing when I'm watching my friends who are now becoming, grandparents. They're literally parenting their adult children as their adult children um, enter into this thing called parenthood. It's a beautiful thing when I get to see that amongst my peers. But sadly, like I said, a lot of my peers are leaving life early because they are neglecting the warning signs of stress. And so, with that being said, we're going to pause for a quick commercial break, and then we're going to continue this conversation on the other side of this break.
There is a prevailing crisis that has crippled families and communities for decades. This crisis has a direct association to higher crime rates, increased poverty, and cost the nation millions of dollars annually. The crisis is the epidemic of fatherlessness. What would the world look like if fathers were not only physically present, but emotionally available as well? What would the conversation between the repentant father and the dejected son sound like? Recognizing that sons, both young and old, need to hear a heart of a father serves as the motivation for this literary work. This book is for those who need wisdom and guidance, never had those necessary moments with their father, or wish they had more moments with their father. Through the affirmation of a father's love, this book will traverse the difficult path from disappointment to hope, and from alienation to reconciliation.
And that is a commercial of my book, Dear Son, The Words of a Father to the Heart of a Son, available at my website, dexterpagansjr.com, as well as on Amazon. Get yourself a copy. I believe that it not only speaks to men, but you'll be surprised about how many women have came up and told me how that book actually spoke to a lot of the issues that they themselves have been dealing with. So listen, we're jumping right back into this conversation, Under Pressure. Earlier, you may have noticed or may have heard that I did not provide any examples for scenarios that may cause bad stress. The truth is that we are all different and we respond differently in the face of certain circumstances. This highlights the importance of understanding your stressors, because the reality is we all have different stressors. Case in point, I was in the military for 15 years. And during that time, I had 3 combat deployments. And when I got out of the military, I actually began working as a hospital chaplain for about 2 years. I can honestly tell you, I was more comfortable in a war environment than many of those days that I was working in that hospital as a chaplain. So I'm gonna say this again. I was actually more comfortable being in a war environment in many instances than I was being actually in that hospital. At the time that I worked at the hospital, we covered down on 5 different hospitals. One of the hospitals included a children's hospital. And I remember very vividly uh, the calls that I would get, because what happened as a chaplain, we would work during the day and then we would rotate being on call. And so, pretty much when you were on call, you would have worked for a 24-hour period. And I remember very vividly some of the calls that I would get uh, on call. I would get a call down to the emergency room where a teenager may have been involved in some type of car accident. And I would have to sit with the family as we waited to hear what the doctor had to say about the condition of that child, if that child was going to make it or not. I remember talking with patients who received terminal diagnosis. Um, in the military, we trained so much that everything was muscle memory. So for the deployments, this made it easier because in instances of high stress, I could just fall back on muscle memory. But in the hospital setting, every time I had to be emotionally present as people dealt with their own crisis. And that began to take a toll on me. Now, I said that to say all this, that sometimes you do not get to control the terms in which bad stress comes, but you do have a say in how you'll respond when it happens. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the ways that you can arm yourself to respond accordingly is to understand your stressors. And so on the screen, we have a few examples of some stressors. This is not an all inclusive list, but for the most part, I believe that it's a pretty good list. You'll see that some stressors for individuals are relationships, Oftentimes, money is always it seems to be a hot button topic as it pertains to stress. It always seems like we might not have enough, and that creates its own level of anxiety. Work, there's a lot of people who do not like doing what it is that they do for employment. And so that becomes a stress. Maybe they don't like their coworkers. Unmanaged health or mental health problems. These are stressors. Racial inequities. And once again, the perception of what we perceive as loss. These are some examples of some of the stressors that we may be dealing with on a day-to-day basis. One of the things that I can tell you all is that by nature, I am a fixer. I'm a solutions centric person. I even put that in the intro. We're giving you in essence solutions to help you navigate your world. The reason why my job as a chaplain was so stressful to me is because I was often put in situations where there was no fix. When you just found out, as a patient, if you just found out that you have 6 months left to live, you may not want to talk to the chaplain right away. As a matter of fact, as you get this bad news, you actually may be mad at God concerning your diagnosis. And in that instance, the chaplain becomes the outlet for your anger. Walking into a room where I knew the tensions may be high, what I had to do was I had to come to a place where I recognized that I was actually bringing undue stress upon myself by trying to be what my job did not require. My job did not require me to fix anything. And so I had to take a step back and say, Dexter, you're doing something that you're not supposed to be doing. Your job does not require you to be a fixer. Your job requires you to be present and to demonstrate compassion while you're being present. That was the emphasis of my job. But when I began to work outside of the parameters of that job, because once again, I'm a fixer, I found myself in these high anxiety moments because it was working against my very nature. Now, earlier I mentioned that I lost my job on my birthday. The stressor wasn't so much the job as much as it was what I perceived that I will be losing as a result of the job loss. Money or the ability to manage my financial obligations, that was the actual source or the root of the stress. Now, here's the deal. I've been an investor for a very long time. For pretty much my whole adult life, I've been an investor. I am fortunate where I receive a pension from the military. I'm a landlord. I have several rental properties. I have a coaching business. So money was still coming in. However, my issue was is that I was focusing on the loss of one stream of income. And as I was focusing on the loss of that one stream, I became consumed with the thought of not having enough. One of the most detrimental things that you can be is ignorant concerning yourself. If you don't know yourself and understand how you're wired, you can run the risk of frequently making the same mistakes. And so, once again, it's imperative that we come to a place where we understand our stressors. As you understand your stressors, you can begin to get to the root of the issue, isolate the root of that issue, and then you can begin to look at it more in a more positive fashion, or you can begin to put things in place to address the root so that it does not begin to impact other areas of your life. I want to talk about a few things that I believe will be beneficial and helpful as it pertains to helping you to manage your stress well. Uh, for many of us, and I'll say this for myself, it's very easy to lose sight of why we are doing the things that we're doing. There are people who have made decisions, maybe to return to school as an adult learner. And maybe they sat down with their family prior to going back to school, and asked for the family support as they made sacrifices in order to successfully obtain this goal of whatever a degree or certification. Uh, Now, the sacrifice may have entailed that they wouldn't be able to go to certain events. Maybe they're going to sacrifice leisure time. But here's the thing, in their mind, they wanted to accomplish the goal of graduating school, and they were able to get the family's buy in. Eventually, this individual accomplishes the goal. They get the degree, they get the certification, but what ends up happening in many instances is that they become so accustomed to the grind that they forgot about reprioritizing their family time. The same can be said for an individual who's working an extra job. Maybe you took on the job so you could save some extra dollars, but in the process, money became the focus. And as a result, you end up losing that balance, that home life balance. What I want to tell you is this: uh, failing to keep things in right perspective can lead to creating a foundation that may serve as a point of contention later. When you don't keep things in right perspective, at some point in time, something is going to get out of whack and it's going to come back to bite you in the butt later. There are times in life where certain things no longer serve you. They had a purpose, they had a time, but for many of us, we are still doing things well beyond the expiration date. What I want to encourage you to do is follow these three words, or at least consider these three words that I'm getting ready to share with you. The three words are simply this: keep, shift, discard. This will help you to determine what things are worthy of maintaining, what's worthy of maintaining. However, the commitment needs to be reduced. And then it also help you to determine what is the time, when it's time, excuse me, to walk away from something. Um, Oftentimes we are still doing stuff that it doesn't serve us anymore. And it's okay to be honest with yourself and say, you know what, at one point in time, I was all about this, but I'm not in that place anymore. And I believe that as we begin to reprioritize things with the right perspective, that will greatly help us to manage our stress, maybe even reduce some of the stress that we're carrying. Another thing that I want to say is simply this: for many of us, we need to get a therapist. You'll be surprised with how many people do not know how to talk about what it is that they're dealing with. And I believe that a therapist will really help you unpack the weight of the stuff that you've been carrying around. There's so many people who carry hurts, who are carrying stress, but they literally do not know what to do with it. And I believe that in getting a therapist, seeking help from a professional, what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to free yourself up and once again be able to see things in the right perspective. They often say that pressure makes diamonds, but it also busts pipes. And more specifically, it can cause some effects that can kill us. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of people that I know have left this life early, not because of any other reason than stress and the fact that they did not know how to manage it properly. And so, with that being said, I want to encourage you all to do the right thing, make yourself a priority, get yourself in order so that you can be of greater assistance to those who you serve in this world, that you can be of greater assistance to the world. And with that being said, this has been Truth of the Matter. I want to say thank you all once again for joining us. Listen, as I mentioned earlier, in addition to this podcast thing and in a number of other areas that I myself serve in. I'm an author, I'm a speaker, and I'm a coach. So do yourself a justice. Go ahead and visit my website, dexterpegginsjr.com, and see if there's something on there that speaks to you, whether it be a book, whether it be a session, or even if it's an event that you are scheduling. But with that being said, I want to say thank you all for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you all next week. Take care, and God bless.
Speaking truth and power, unlocking minds, one day at a time, day at a time. Speaking truth and power, unlocking minds, one day at a time, day at a time. Truth of the matter is that truth really matters, yeah. Truth of the matter is that truth really matters, yeah. In the beginning, I was back and forth like badminton, lacking wisdom, no direction for proper decisions. I heard my bro had a show, so I started to listen. Truth of the matter, ain't no comparing the competition. The kid feeling blessed, cause it's clear as Windex. After talking with Dex, I know just where to step. I know the path gon' be narrow, but my eyes on the sparrow. And the truth of the matter is that truth really matters. Truth of the matter, that truth really matters. Hey, truth of the matter.